Here we are, the last major tier list for the first Dead Rising, since the Psychopath tier list will be franchise-wide, all 120 weapons ranked worst to best. Roughly speaking anyway. My listing won't be as straightforward as the tier list others have made. I'm not just looking at the strength and durability, I'm also factoring if Frank needs level ups for the weapon to one-shot zombies, if the weapon at its best suffers heavily come nightfall, how helpful it is against the cop zombies at night, the cultists, and the psychopaths, how easily it can kill survivors the player might be trying to save, how many different parts of the mall the weapon spawns in, how many books possibly affect it, and finally its effectiveness in both overtime and infinity mode. I'm also going to be judging these weapons under the assumption that you're trying to save survivors while going for the true ending, with an emphasis on a level 1 playthrough or the player having restarted at mid-level, say 25 to 35. Level 50 New Game Plus and just messing around will be kept in mind, but in either of these cases how good a weapon is becomes far less important. Also, vehicles won't be factored in unless they have an inventory icon, so shopping carts and skateboards count, but the bikes and cars don't. Finally, some weapons will be bunched together and treated as extensions of each other, especially if they all use an identical manner of attacking and are affected by the same book. Oh, and for those of you who are curious about Deluxe Remaster, I'll explain at the end of this how weapon rankings would change if I was judging on that version instead. You're gonna see some high quality images throughout this video. They were made by the Dead Rising YouTube animator NinjaGo Josh, who kindly offered to help me with this video. Go check out his channel. Alright, let's not waste any more time. We have a lot of ground to cover.
Clean is better than dirty, and dirty's meaner than clean.
The water gun is the only weapon in the first Dead Rising that cannot deal damage. As such, it's a horrible weapon that really only exists to be a joke. And as a joke, it's pretty funny, but it's never a good sign when going into a fight barehanded would be a better option. If this weapon could be fired at the ground to make puddles that zombies slip on, it might have gotten as high up as C tier. But as it stands, it's a decorative set piece in Paradise Plaza that you can put in your inventory. And getting one from the cardboard box may as well have been a dud. Also, the Dead Rising wiki says it's useful for stopping survivors being in a panic state, but simply walking away and pressing Y will do the job better. And even though the attack does no damage, it will contribute to survivor defection. So in this case, ignore the wiki and ignore the water gun. Plastic! They can't call the rat saucer a frisbee because that's a copyright of Whammo. This weapon also cannot do damage on its own, but as a throwing weapon has a naughty little secret at level 50. Frank can instantly kill zombies, survivors, and cultists with a precise headshot once he's maxed out the throwing stat. Now, in the case of this weapon, it's more of a fun novelty than anything else. It can technically be useful at level 50 to clear out zombies on your way to get a fresh ceremonial sword, but if you need to go through the movie theater, there's much better improvised weapons in that theater for you to use. And if you miss the very precise location that triggers the instant kill effect, you just made someone very angry by lobbing plastic at them. The stuffed animal's quick attacks and long combo are its most appealing features. Unfortunately, those two honestly impressive stats are undermined by its bare minimum damage and the lack of knockback to zombies. It could get away with one of those downsides. If it was like the perfume prop, where its damage was suboptimal but viable, it would be a solid weapon to use once Frank gets his attack stat up high enough. If it was like the shovel, where it was really good at knocking zombies to the floor, then it would be a weak weapon that's great at making space while being safe to use around survivors. But it's neither, and a heavy weapon that cannot reliably make space one way or the other is seldom worth using. Even throwing it is unreliable, as its lack of weight means it will bounce all over the place, and it's not strong enough to kill a female zombie. Oh well, at least this one actually does damage. Most of the improvised weapons in the mall do not fit in Frank's inventory, and a special subset of them have the unique trait of instantly killing a zombie, but instantly breaking upon hit. All of them are getting lumped together into a single segment. The wine casket, vases, and the short-potted plants all deal massive damage for the one hit they're good for. Now, there are small potted plants that, unlike those previous three examples, actually do fit in your inventory, but they only deal half the damage and you'll rarely find more than 2 of them, so I would call that a zero-sum gain. If you need to kill 1 or 2 zombies quickly without using up weapon durability, and you just can't be bothered to pull out a Street Fighter move, then yeah, these'll work in that pinch. And since they break instantly, they at least have no ending lag, which is a problem that a lot of heavy weapons can suffer from. But at the same time, their uniquely high damage can almost never be taken advantage of, since bosses don't tend to be around them, and the ones that are very rarely will let you hit them. And let's be honest, there's not many situations where there's only 1 or 2 zombies that need to be taken care of that you can't just use a weapon for. And if there's so few zombies that these can solve the problem, you can usually just walk around them. It's still really cool that something that's normally a set piece in a video game is an actual weapon, but unless you were too late to reach Kent, you'll probably never bother with these. Now, this is the first weapon ranking that actually means something. Everything up until this point would just be a prop in the environment in other games, or it would be something you would take apart for the plastic. But keep in mind that I am saying the Molotov cocktails are worse weapons than the toy laser sword. For those of you out there who are ready to head for the retirement home and saw my original book tier list, you would know that's not something I say lightly. Because Dead Rising doesn't have zombies catch fire during the gameplay, the Molotovs are just contact grenades. By itself, that's useful. In fact, they're incredibly useful. They have a really good blast radius and their damage is not bad. But you only get these halfway into day 3, and only if you save Paul. The only boss left to fight is Larry, whose gargantuan health pool requires 12 of these to take down. Made worse by the fact you only get 1 per slot, unlike the plates or CDs that stack. And worse still, the Special Forces arriving means Paul goes away, so the Molotovs can't be gotten anymore. But Larry is a story boss and the only thing left to fight at that point. So the only situation it would be useful in guarantees their limited utility. No achievement unlocks them in New Game Plus either, so you just can't make really good use of them. And even if you decide to botch the story, they're only a decent mess-around weapon. A theoretically great weapon that has no place in the game. Sad, really. 2 boss drops back to back, huh? Yep. This weapon's stats are pretty unimpressive for the final boss drop of story mode. Its damage output is pretty 1-to-1 with Cliff's machete, but its durability is only 30 hits, a mere 10 above the average bladed weapon in the mall. If there's any truth to the idea that Larry was originally going to be the boss of Case 4-2, and instead Cliff was meant to be the final boss of 72-hour mode, then I could see how the meat cleaver ended up a better knife but worse machete. But regardless of why it is, it's still one of the most disposable boss rewards in the franchise. There's almost nothing left to use it against beyond the Special Forces, and any of the other 3 go-to boss drops will do the job just as good and last a lot longer while doing it. It doesn't even appear in the Survivor loot boxes in the Infinity mode, so it can't help you there either. What saves it from E tier, if only just barely, is that if you start a fresh run in Overtime mode, specifically, the meat cleaver will always be available. After all, Larry is a storyline boss fight, so he's always guaranteed to have his drop there, while the optional boss drops like Adam and Cliff require you to carry them from 72-hour mode. So, for players specifically achievement hunting in Overtime mode, this weapon could be useful. It's not likely, and it's still a pretty pathetic performance for what is effectively the final boss weapon, but still, it is a use.
You are a toy!
The Paradise Plaza toy laser sword's only benefit is seeing in the dark since its attack damage is so pitiful. This is painfully limited. First, it only works in the nighttime versions of a map. So, mall locations that lack night variations like the movie theater or the underground tunnel will literally leave you in the dark. Leisure Park gets dark the earliest at 7 p.m., but the convicts are the only real threat you need to worry about there, and the truck's headlights make them hard to miss. As for the rest of the mall, there's a rather limited window of when this thing is even active, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., and the mall already starts getting bright by 5 a.m. The first 2 nights have a very limited selection of survivor missions you'll even need to deal with in the dark. Greg and the tourists are a straight shot back thanks to the shortcut. Cletus could benefit from the extra light, but David is manually carried back, so there's no getting lost there. Same goes for Isabella on day 2, with the extra note of Kendall being able to blast zombies to pieces regardless of eyesight. And the trek from Movieland to Paradise Plaza hardly justifies the inventory space, especially since you would much rather have queens at that point. Like the meat cleaver, the Special Forces are when the toy rises to the occasion. The red glow it gives allows the player to easily see Special Forces agents that would otherwise camouflage with the shadows of the Parkview Mall, both for Day 3 and Overtime mode. Beyond that, it's more of a neat detail than a crucial mechanic, especially in the 2016 port, which made them all brighter. Not to be confused with the unlockable weapon, the toy Mega Buster spawns indefinitely in the movie theater. It doesn't deal good damage, but its fast rate of fire can kill a zombie in 5 hits during the day. This makes it a serviceable ranged option for going through the theater if health is very low and the player doesn't want to take the chances, and they don't feel like combining 2 chips together to make Spitfire at the nearby blender for whatever reason. Otherwise, it's just a funny joke that deals just enough damage to not be E tier. I mean, I made a video showing that 2 of these can kill Carlito at level 1, and most bosses can be killed with 4 to 5 of them if Frank has the inventory for it. So, if you're gonna use a joke weapon, at least this one's an effective joke.
So, like I was telling my buddies, I was saying, can you believe this cherry lemonade from Hubba Bubba Max?
Grouping both of these together, since they're the heavy slipping hazards that only spawn in specific locations, the gumball machine is definitely the more useful of the two, as its massive size makes it a good melee weapon for zombies. The oil bucket spawns indefinitely in Alfresca Plaza, so throwing it can make a wall to help buy time to rev up a chainsaw. Otherwise, they're just more heavy improvised weapons, which are a dime a dozen in the mall, most of them are more common, and pretty much all of them have better attacks.
Never have that damn thing down in front of me!
A whole bunch of items are sharing a slot here, but that's because all of these share the same general purpose. You shove them into a zombie's mouth, over their head, or through their torso to distract or otherwise impair them. The most famous of these being the Servbot helmet. They're integral to the game's sense of humor, so much so that even Dead Rising 4 found time to re-implement them. They aren't much better than the heavy busters in that regard, but they can be reused with relative ease should you decide to kill the zombie that you blinded. However, they have a massive weakness. In order to save on the game's memory, zombies will despawn if you go too far away, and any items attached to them will go along for the ride. So you won't be able to retrieve them if you decide to walk away and then walk back. This makes the items that come from the infinite spawners far more appealing, especially since they're the most practical purpose to pacify a zombie that walks in while you're trying to do something else. This results in the hangers being the best item of this type, since they're the most common and therefore the most useful. The condiments at the various restaurants are also nice, since typically there's only going to be 1 or 2 zombies there. The showerhead can actually kill zombies, but that's more useful for taking a brutal photo rather than anything practical. On the other side, the painting is easily the worst of these, as it does not fit in your inventory and it's not very common. Do take note though that the novelty hats are the first weapons that get noticeably better at max level, as Frank can start one-shotting zombies during the day with them by whacking them with it via the heavy attack. Given that the main appeal of these is dealing with single-digit zombie counts, being able to take down 9 or 10 of them is pretty nice. Overall, I'd call them acceptable of-the-moment options, but nothing I would ever devote long-term inventory space to.
Rats, we're furry and forlorn.
At face value, the rat stick is just a worse lead pipe. What makes it actually useful is the throwing attack. The rat stick will simply impale a walker and cause it to bleed to death. The lead pipe can also do this, but there's no practical reason to do it since it's a good melee weapon. The rat stick, however, can be very helpful when returning to the movie theater to get a new ceremonial sword. In fact, when going through the movie theater, throwing these and letting the bleed damage kill zombies one by one is a safer and more reliable method to get to the ceremonial sword than the toy Mega Busters. If these were available throughout the mall, they might have gotten as high as C or even low B tier. Stocking up on these and killing the horde bit by bit is shockingly viable. And because they stick into the zombie, they're easy to retrieve, one of the biggest problems with throwing weapons in this game. Sadly, their low durability, weak melee damage, and the fact they're only in one location makes them impractical to use outside of movie land. The mannequin breaks in a measly 6 hits, rendering it near useless even if you buff it with books. However, upon breaking, each of its parts can be used as a weapon, and all of them are a bit stronger than you'd think. Sadly, the mannequin itself isn't all that common, despite this being a mall, and not all parts are created equal. So, as it stands, the mannequin is strictly a means to the end, especially compared to other item spawners in the game. The individual parts will be ranked separately later down the list.
I expect nothing, and I'm still let down.
I want to like the nail gun so badly, but it's just not that good. The idea is that it does half the damage of the handgun but has twice the ammo. And to be fair, it's not terrible for psychopaths, as that extra ammo does give you more mistake allowance, but it's still way too slow of a ranged weapon. And worse yet, it's way too rare, as it only spawns in North Plaza and the Home Saloon. You know, the part of the mall where the gun store is. With the guns. The real guns. Without exaggeration, one of these spawning in the warehouse would push it to C tier minimum, as being able to ensure you always have an acceptable ranged option would be invaluable, even if it's one as mediocre as this. I will say it can be a slow way to take out Cletus with the cheese strat if you can't find a proper handgun, and it can defend David while you talk to him, so I can't go as far as to call it useless. Actually, speaking of uses, if you're a really good shot, you can even take down the helicopter with this. This is because the nails are projectiles and therefore don't suffer damage drop-off and don't despawn, a trait it shares with the golf club. I still wouldn't call it the ideal or even a practical solution, but it is a funny option, and if you can get it to work consistently, more power to you. The small chairs are just better versions of the teddy bear. They don't have as long of an attack combo, but they actually do damage. In fact, once Frank maxes out his attack, their damage is pretty solid and can kill zombies with ease. And the rapid attacks make them a decent way to clear out some space if needed. This is the first example of a reasonable improvised piece of furniture used as a weapon. Against the common zombies, they work in a pinch even if you don't have a durability book. Which is frankly all I expect from a weapon like this.
I'll be honest with you, mate. I'd genuinely rather watch paint dry.
The Dead Rising wiki considers these throwing weapons. That is borderline misinformation. It is true that the paint cans can blind zombies when thrown at their heads, but it will severely damage or just break the can when done so. And at a high enough level, it just kills the zombie outright. The blinding effect is too weak for how slow it is to apply, and a throwing weapon that breaks after one use and can only kill at most a single zombie, not what I'd call useful. Thankfully, it's a decent melee weapon. Not a great one, but definitely usable. The ones in the hardware stores are pretty useless since better weapons are literally right around the corner. But in the warehouse, the player can use the paint cans to clear out zombies as they travel back into the mall, saving the better weapons in the warehouse, like the 2x4, the lead pipe, or the sledgehammer, for their proper chopping spree. On a tier list like this, little utility like that goes a long way.
Oops, you have to put the CD in your computer.
The CDs are a better version of the rat saucer, because once you get to level 50, they also gain that instant kill headshot effect. But, unlike the Frisbee, you don't need to go manually retrieve them. This can make them a decent method of dealing with zombies or even cultists in a pinch. Sadly, the damage output is too low to reliably kill any zombies otherwise, even at max level, and there are no psychopaths that these naturally spawn near besides Isabella, and I guess Kent technically. They can be fun to mess around with in New Game Plus, but after day 1 on a level 50 run, I found no practical use for them. They're just objectively not bad enough in any way to put below C tier. If we're going on fun factor, this is S tier, and number 1 at that. Being able to use a zombie as a weapon and turn it into a slow, deadly plow is both really funny and shockingly helpful, since Frank is difficult to interrupt when he's doing this. Sadly, it is horribly limited by its lack of spawn locations. There are only 3 locations you can find this: the Home Saloon, a single spot in North Plaza, and a single one out in the park. It can be useful as a way to get to the gun store safely, but I'd argue that the faster shopping carts are preferable, and they can also get you back. Like a lot of weapons on this tier list, its spawning in 1 or 2 more locations would help it greatly. Like, imagine if one of these could be found in Alfresca Plaza's hardware store. That would be able to bump this up to B tier, and I might actually go to Alfresca Plaza more than the few times the game forces me to.
One eternity later.
Ah, the laser sword, the single most powerful weapon in the game, locked behind spending 5 days in the Infinity mode. And that sums up its 2 biggest problems. First, the Infinity mode is often the last thing the player tackles in Dead Rising. Just period. And solely because of the time commitment. So there's really nothing left to achieve once most players get it beyond sheer gratification. Now, to be fair, the sword itself is good. It deals just under 4 blocks of damage at max level, and its alternate attack is a really good spear jab that can deal with hordes and bosses easily. However, That damage is a double-edged sword, as it will instantly kill any female survivor and bring a full health male survivor to death's door. And since the sword actually reaches behind Frank when he swings, well, Cheryl and Alyssa love to be really close to Frank when he's escorting them, and it has been their last mistake more than once. It really is that last part that soils it more than anything for me. It's very much a case of too much of a good thing. Ironically, if the weapon was weaker, like let's say no stronger than the small chainsaw, it might rank higher just by virtue of being safer to use. But while it's fun and satisfying to kill zombies and psychopaths with it, it's a bragging rights reward with a very probable chance of accidentally killing someone you're trying to save. And given that survivors are really the only side content the first Dead Rising has, that is not something I can just ignore.
Like there's no room for any of this garbage.
This must seem like a bizarre combination of weapons, and at a glance, there's no common thread between them. The reason they're all ranked together is because these weapons benefit from being very precise but very useful weaknesses for certain bosses. The stepladder and the mailbox are good against Cliff thanks to their longer ranges compared to other melee weapons, although the stepladder's damage output isn't that great, and the mailbox is very slow until you break off the box itself. The steel and sausage racks can take a lot of health off Larry in a single hit, especially with how often he's passive in the fight. Although, don't be surprised if you get hit in retaliation with how bad the end lag is. The store displays can block Cletus's gunshots if positioned just right. It has the ability to make his fight actually tolerable. But getting that position can feel like luck more than skill. The King Salmon can be a good way to defeat Steven, as they spawn indefinitely in the store, but they break after 2 hits and books don't work on them. The hockey stick is the king of niche, with it allowing you to effectively skip the fight with Carlito's sniper form. The hockey stick and store display are easily the best weapons for their respective bosses, but they're also easily the worst weapons outside of the context of that boss, at least of these 5.
Are you sure about that?
So, I'd say that all of these even out to mid-C tier.
YouTube comment suggestions.
The cooking oil can create a slipping hazard for zombies when broken. This can be used to create an area of denial from the undead in stores that have one of these lying around in. And while they don't last for too long, they're an okay melee weapon once Frank gets his attack damage up, and that slip factor is real appealing. Though honestly, I think the fact that you can put these into a blender and turn them into Spitfire is more useful than using them as a weapon. If the buffs from Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster were applied to this game, you know, one where the zombie horde actually poses a threat, I could see the cooking oil ranking an entire tier higher.
I see you, Zap.
As a boss reward, the stun gun sucks. They take up way too much durability to kill a single zombie, and because they're percentage-based, they'll wear out even if you don't land a hit. However, they're not limited to Joe Slade's defeat, she just guarantees that one spawns. Stun guns can be found in the cardboard boxes in the warehouse and Wonderland Plaza, though in the latter's case it's rather rare. So how is it as an improvised melee weapon? It's alright. It's not a good long-term solution to your zombie problem, but the ability to quickly kill a zombie with 0 end lag is not bad. And since they're at their most common in the warehouse, where killing individual zombies without getting bitten to save time between trips is actually valuable, yeah, not bad. What pushes it this far up, however, is the Infinity mode. The stun gun actually deals pretty good damage against human enemies in this game. And, most importantly, it can stun lock them in place. Most psychopaths are too mobile and get super armor to go through the stun mechanic, so it's not great against them. But with hostile survivors running all over the place, and the player often having a spare inventory slot after healing, carrying a stun gun to hurt or immobilize an enemy can be a wise choice here.
I appear to have burst into flames. Fire! 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 I do believe I'm on fire.
I originally considered putting the fire extinguisher with the other boss weaknesses section, but there's a few things that lift it up a tad. First is that it actually lets you save Paul, so that alone should at least warrant a separate ranking. It also has 2 very niche uses. First, it can blind zombies if it manages to spray their face. So, while the foam cannot kill them, a lucky shot with its regular attack can actually blind the horde. Though it's not particularly reliable, so this is something you have to both practice and get lucky with. The other thing is that it can immobilize survivors and leave them panicking or coughing violently, which is very useful in the Infinity mode if the laser weapons aren't being used to instantly kill them. So, in a sense, it's a better cooking oil and a better stun gun. If you could aim the foam attack manually, it would be the best zombie blinder in the franchise. If it were more common, it would be a great last resort in the Infinity mode against the hostile survivors. But as it stands, I can't put it any higher than C tier.
Yo, tell me this doesn't sound like when you're building some shit in LEGO Star Wars, bro.
These are perfectly fine melee weapons, but in every location they spawn in, you can find stronger weapons that will last longer and have better range. If you find a toolbox, there's almost always a lead pipe nearby. If you found a broken mannequin, the torso is right there. But to be fair, as I also brought up with the likes of the paint can, you can use these to save the better items for later if you have the inventory space. And to be fair, being suboptimal is not the same thing as being bad or even ineffective. So, the throwing weapons are interesting. The saw blades can pass through zombies for an instant kill, and even passes through psychopaths for some pretty good damage. The soccer ball and toy cube instead elect to bounce between targets. The soccer ball does more damage while the toy cube lasts longer. All of them, however, have a major weakness. They need to be manually retrieved. That might seem like a no-duh statement, but with how many zombies this game has on screen, there's a very real chance they're going to land in a very dangerous spot, and that's assuming you even know where they landed. The boomerang and the bent mannequin limb don't have these problems since they return to you, but this presents the new issue. If a zombie requires you to move before you can grab it, they keep going in a straight line that the return trip sent them on. And given that the best place to use them is outside where you have the wide open space and nothing to interrupt them, that means they're gonna land a good 10 to 20 meters away from your current location. Still, even with these flaws, they have their moments and they have their uses. But because of those flaws, they are not the go-to weapons they honestly deserve to be. I could easily move these into B or even A tier if there was a book that would auto-retrieve throwing items for you.
Gazpacho, pass me the M60!
The heavy machine gun does absurd damage and can kill bosses in less than 10 shots, comes with 200 bullets, and has incredibly reliable auto-aim for hip fire that will always kill a zombie on hit. However, it can also instantly kill a survivor since the gun's angle makes it easy to headshot them with the auto-aim, so be careful when escorting. Sadly, it can only be gotten from the convicts, leaving you with two options. Either kill all three of them to safely grab it, but limit how many of them you can get, or only kill the gunner and grab it so it respawns, but then have the convicts dog you the entire way back to the mall, all while you're carrying a very heavy item that does not fit in your inventory. Speaking of this being a heavy item, it is surprisingly inefficient against the Raincoat Cult. Namely, it's because that they can survive a shot from this thing, which then puts them into kamikaze health range, and, you know, it's a heavy weapon, so a single hit from them will make you drop it. And when a common pistol is enough for the cultists, I can't recommend wasting the ammo on them. The machine gun, on the other hand, spawns from the Special Forces, and Brett, if you're willing to trade weapons with them. Its damage output against bosses is okay. It's a better SMG and with more ammo to boot, but the damage per shot is nothing special. But its strong DPS is hampered by the fact there's only 3 bosses left to face when you can get one from Brett. It's decent against Paul since you can time your shots to make him drop his Molotov cocktails and have him take a lot of damage, but Kent is too agile to be easily hit without accidentally hitting or killing Tad, and Larry is such an absolute tank it will barely phase him. They become basically the only weapon you need when the Special Forces show up, but remember to lightly tap instead of auto-fire so the Spec Ops iframes don't kick in. In the end, both are strong guns that struggle to find long-term use for the player, but are adaptable enough to help with bosses or enemies if the player routes themselves correctly, so they manage to avoid E-tier hell like the Molotov cocktail did. Gems are really bad at dealing damage. Even at level 50, firing all 10 into a single zombie will not kill it. However, they are great at knocking zombies over, and once Frank maxes out his throwing stat, a headshot will instantly kill a zombie. Sadly, both stats are undone by it having the worst accuracy of any weapon I have ever used in a video game. This makes it very difficult to intentionally land a headshot on a zombie, while making it very easy to accidentally land a headshot on a survivor you weren't aiming at. As such, gemstones are locked into C tier because, while they're very good for a low-level Frank to clear the way safely, they actually become a little worse at max level because they can kill the survivors you're trying to save, while not actually being that much more powerful.
Birdie putt. Nice birdie.
At first glance, the golf club is a bizarre improvised handgun. It has the same ammo and damage output, but it lacks any damage drop-off and can be fired from behind cover. But it also lacks a proper aiming reticule, making the act of aiming this thing itself a skill. But where I find the golf club starts to shine is when you ignore its projectile. Not that the projectile is worthless, but you see, the club swing itself is a melee attack. So, similar to the stun gun, it'll use up ammo and therefore quote-unquote degrade regardless if the attack lands. But it also means that the club swing will never lose more than a single hit's worth of durability, no matter how many zombies you hit. And since Frank doesn't need to be that high of a level to start one-shotting zombies with this thing, it can be a very unconventional but powerful melee weapon if you're good with lining up. Used optimally, this thing can kill as many zombies as a baseball bat with the sportsbook. Sadly, it will not always be optimally used. Because it still is treated as a gun first and a melee weapon second, the aim assist will look for an enemy to hit, which makes it very difficult to line up a swing of the club. But because you'll also be right next to something, the range will be so close that you'll probably whiff whatever the game was trying to aim at. And there will be times where there's only one zombie you need to kill, meaning you're probably going to waste ammo if you're not willing to use a skill move. If the sportsbook could triple the ammo to 90, this would be a B or A tier weapon, as the difficult but awesome choice. I suppose that description does still apply, but in a much more middling sense. It's not great as a ranged weapon thanks to its difficulty to aim, and it's not consistent enough as a melee weapon to hang with the greats.
This is my stuff!
The weapons card is more fun than useful, as it gets replaced pretty quickly by Isabella's motorcycle. However, it's far from useless. The travel book will triple its durability, allowing you to take this with you pretty much anywhere in the mall, compared to the motorcycle, which is limited to areas that lack doors. And there are some situational uses you can get out of it. Particularly if you want to use guns to fight Cliff, it might be worth taking the long way to pick this up, so you can safely push yourself to the gun store, stock up, and then fight your way back out without losing much health. And you will almost certainly use it on your way to the Lover's Side quest, since that mission begins around the time you fight Steven. While it's normally just a gratifying but painfully out-of-the-way weapon, the weapons cart does have enough regular utility on a standard run to get to the upper half of C tier. Strange that criminal biology doesn't work on it, though.
Soup can! Pile!
So, when it comes to the food weapons in this tier, there's almost nothing to say about them. They only do okay damage, and they break pretty quickly, so you're not going to hold on to them for long. But you also don't need to. You see, you find these in restaurants, so most of the time there's only going to be a few zombies you need to kill, and using these to clear out the zombie population while you cook or blend is useful. Plus, you can throw them into a blender and turn them into a proper healing item, and they tend to make Spitfire to boot. Beyond that, they're unremarkable but inoffensive options.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
Another weapon with not much to say on, though with the handbag, once Frank maxes out his attack stats, it becomes a okay weapon that can be found all over the mall, to the point where some of the weaker bosses can be beaten with them, given enough patience. Beyond that, it falls in line with the food items, but they appear in the clothing stores, which are far more common. They can also drop a random amount of gems when destroyed. The bench's attack is powerful but clumsy, with a heavy windup and a frustrating amount of end lag. This really weakens its otherwise impressive ability to one-shot cultists, quite reliably with max attack. And it makes it almost impossible to justify using against bosses unless you're really good at predicting the sniper's movement. When thrown at a high level, it can power through several groups of zombies, and take them out in the process. But for the most part, its best use is upon breaking, dropping a piece of 2x4. If the charge attack was its heavy attack and it had a light move that could shove zombies back, or otherwise just a quicker but weaker option, I could see it breaking into B tier. But a situational weapon like this being near the top of C tier, yet available in most parts of the mall, not half bad. Just too awkward to place any higher.
Hey Hank, look, propane!
These three items mainly serve as a quick way to dispatch of zombies in an area, as the lawnmower can clear the way to the food court or mow down zombies in the home saloon. The consumer propane tank can help you get back into Paradise Plaza or the warehouse should you have a gun. And finally, the industrial propane tanks can take out a massive group if they spawn in a favorable location. Although, they spawn randomly depending on what the zombies feel like holding, so they're not quite as reliable. The lawnmower is a bit too slow, and the propane tanks do require a gun to make use of, so I can't move them up to B tier, but I use them way too often to put them anywhere lower than high C.
Boom headshot! Boom headshot! Boom headshot!
The sniper rifle is the most versatile anti-psychopath weapon in the game. Its all but infinite range and consistent damage makes it great for just about any encounter. The bosses this is best against is Steven, the Hall family, and Isabella. For Steven, it's easy to lock him into a straight line and open fire. The Hall family is because once one member is defeated, his rifle can be used to defeat the other two. This leads to the unfortunate but efficient strategy of slaying Roger and then using his rifle on his next of kin. Isabella works because a sniper from them can be taken to her, and her positioning on the bike ensures that Frank can land headshots with hip fire. Sadly, this is also where the rifle starts to falter, as it can only be gotten from the gun shop as the Hall family's rifles do not respawn in the entrance plaza, so you have to go off the beaten path to get one of them most of the time. Now, for the more all-purpose boss drops like the machete or the shotgun, that's fine. But the sniper rifle is only really good for psychopaths. Its ammo is the same as the handgun at 30, and it bizarrely lacks any target penetration while the shotgun does get it. It can instantly kill a cultist with a headshot, but it needs to be a precise headshot, or they'll survive and enter kamikaze mode while learning your location. And the special forces just tend to outdamage Frank with firearms in general. So outside of boss fights, it's just a better handgun in a really inconvenient location. Just inconvenient enough to keep it out of B tier.
Drake? What? Where's the door hole?
This thing just tears zombies apart, and it can be really helpful in the North Plaza, but it requires a book for any extensive use. Its durability is just too low. And that's what hurts the weapon. It's powerful, useful, but way too fragile. But still, even without books, it makes getting to the gun shop a much safer prospect, and both of the books that work on it are useful in general. So it's worth it, especially if you need a sniper rifle.
I live in a low-income housing environment that goes by the government name of Section 8.
The Dead Rising series never topped the real Mega Buster in terms of unlockable weapons. It is just the right level of broken. A gun with no damage drop-off, 1 block's worth of damage per shot, 300 shots, but is locked behind a very tedious achievement of killing 54,000 zombies in a single playthrough. The last detail is why it doesn't rank any higher, but you probably guessed that after the laser sword. For most people, this weapon will be their go-to in the Infinity mode, just so they can hold as much inventory space for healing as possible. And unlike the laser sword, this is something most players will do before 100%ing the game, so the Mega Buster actually can help with achievement hunting. Given that B tier is when weapons start getting consistently good or worth the effort of going out of the way to use, the gun locked to New Game Plus with unparalleled power is a perfect place to start.
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
The hunk of meat is functionally no different from any other item that you can shove into a zombie's mouth, with one major difference. It passively attracts zombies. It's the only item in the first game to have such an ability. Now sure, this only works when it's not being held by the player or a zombie, but it doesn't change the fact that you can place this just out of a zombie's reach, and have what amounts to a permanent zombie magnet in any safe location. Failing that, putting it in a very inconvenient location can buy enough time to draw zombies away from survivors you're escorting or talking to. Given that literally no other weapon in the game can achieve this, B rank is a minimum. That being said, actually killing the zombies is still usually preferable.
What is the solution to the equation 2 plus 2?
I don't know. What does 2 plus 2 equal?
Weed eater.
The hedge trimmers are the last weapon on this list with any kind of consistency problems. Its range is abysmal, but its attack has no end lag, making it the most spammable melee weapon in the game for zombies, but not very useful against psychopaths. However, the range is not where the consistency problems come in. That is a result of its damage. You see, the trimmer deals solid but not amazing damage, but gets an extra boost of damage when it cuts off a limb. This can be a bit of a problem, as it makes killing zombies at night far less consistent. Even at level 50, the bulkier zombies can survive a stomach trimming if you don't hit a limb. So, how does a weapon like this end up in the tier where weapons are supposed to start getting consistently good? 2 words: triple booking. The term simply refers to when there are 3 books in the game that apply to a single item, the max in the first Dead Rising. Now, applying all 3 books to a weapon is rarely a practical option on a level 1 run, which I'll get into later as the tier list goes on. Just know that the real benefit of a weapon being able to be triple booked means that there are now 3 different books that you can apply to it, making the weapon apply to more playstyles. So, for example, the Hedge Trimmer works with Criminal Biology, which works with all bladed books, Construction, which works with all industrial books, and Lifestyle Magazine, which affects household items. While I wouldn't recommend devoting a third of your inventory to buff the Hedge Trimmers, if you use any of these books for their other weapons, you can now incorporate the Hedge Trimmers into that playstyle. That kind of adaptability is the true strength of triple booked weapons.
While you're there, stock up. If it's not nailed down, loot it.
This is a collection of heavy items found throughout the mall. I'm willing to lump them together since they serve the same purpose and none of them need a book to be of use, although some of them are buffed by interior design. The barbell lasts for a whopping 50 hits, and gets heavy priority over the zombies when thrown, while being too heavy to bounce all over the place, ironically making it one of, if not the best throwing weapons in the game. The cactus has the best range of any melee weapon in the franchise, and the food court only needs a couple dozen zombies at most killed to make the restaurant safe to explore. The other potted plants aren't too shabby either. They're pretty common, and they have enough range and durability to minimize Frank getting swarmed. The heavy chairs can cover a lot of area in a single hit. The fences can attack several times before Frank needs to catch his breath. The bar stools are just better versions of the normal chairs, and one can be picked up every time Frank enters Paradise Plaza through the park. And the cash registers are just incredibly common, with nearly every single store having one. These heavy weapons make for surprisingly viable improvised killing tools, and if you're practiced enough with their attack animations, they can become your go-to options while out and about. At least when it comes to dealing with the common zombies.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
The CR and HD TVs get a separate ranking because they have the best combo attack in the game, being able to hit 4 times in a row and with heavy damage that are pretty easy to time. The standard TVs in the warehouse can help clear out the zombie density, and the HD TVs in the entrance and Wonderland plazas can help out with bosses like the Hall family or Joe. Not necessarily kill them single-handedly, but take a good chunk of health off. Overall, they're just a bit easier and deserve to be acknowledged as such. But the TVs are not affected by lifestyle, but instead the far less useful interior design, so I can't put them significantly higher.
Yeah, but first a quick word from our sponsor.
The perfume prop and lipstick prop are improvised weapons only found in Wonderland Plaza. They aren't the best options by default, but once Frank gets to his mid-30s, they become strong enough to work as improvised weapons that don't require Frank to duck into a store to get. And given how hectic Wonderland Plaza gets on days 2 and 3, and how there's 3 separate boss fights there, anything that saves time will be welcome. The pet food only spawns in the supermarket. It's definitely not worth a special trip just to nab a bag, but it's easily the best melee weapon that indefinitely spawns in there, being able to one-shot most zombies at high levels. It, alongside the perfume prop, can also make zombies slip when they break, but their decent damage and durability makes this more of a bonus than the main reason to use them. After all, the perfume prop's puddle is no bigger than, let's say, the cooking oil, and the pet food doesn't have a lingering slip effect, even if its actual radius is much bigger. Even still, these 3 weapons are the perfect examples of the unexpectedly powerful melee weapons that I think the fanbase really wants from a Dead Rising game.
Me and a group of my allies control certain areas of this section in order to run our illegitimate business.
These 4 weapons all use the slow overhead swing animation. They can instantly kill a zombie if it lands on the head regardless of Frank's level, but the same is true for survivors. Since they all have the same risk of the attacks but are found in different locations in the mall, they get lumped together. The fire axe is the only one that doesn't need to always land a headshot, even at nighttime, but it has the lowest durability at 25 hits, basically requiring Criminal Biology since they only spawn in the home saloon, for some reason. The bowling ball can be found in Paradise Plaza and a few other sports stores, and it works with the sports book, one of the more useful books in the game. It also has the best throwing animation of anything in the franchise. However, it's also the weakest of these weapons if you miss that blow to the head, often requiring a second hit to kill anything beyond the weakest of zombies. The rock can be found outside and in the overtime tunnels. It's slightly stronger than the bowling ball, but cannot be affected by any books. But with 50 hits per rock, it doesn't really need one. And finally, the dumbbell is powerful, durable at 40 hits, and can be buffed through sports. But it requires you to go to Alfresca Plaza to get one. If this kind of weapon appeals to you, there's at least one weapon that will surely accommodate your playstyle, and it's possible to have Frank to be prepped to make use of these weapons exclusively, but they are definitely risky options when saving survivors, so approach with caution.
Astaroth wins. Hey, at least put up a fight.
I would argue the Battle Axe is tied with the Excavator for being the most fun weapon in the first Dead Rising. A weapon so gratifying that even Shop To You Drop felt inclined to bring it back. While it's only found in the Entrance Plaza pawn shop, that's not too far out of the way from any given trip out of the warehouse. Its durability only being 5 hits above the standard knife, however, is a bit of a buzzkill. Its biggest problem, though, is its attack speed. This weapon is slow to use. Now, that's irrelevant against the zombie horde, but it greatly limits its options against bosses. Made even worse by the blind spot to its swings, making it easy to miss a target that's moving away from Frank or is immediately to his side. So it's one of, if not the best crowd control options in terms of melee weapons, only being outclassed by boss weapons with durability in mind. And even then, let's be real, if you're going for the Battle Axe, you have criminal biology. But its rarity and attack speed problems make a weapon that's just not cut out to make it to A tier.
Ice Climbers!
This weapon is an improvement from the other over-the-head weapons, as it attacks faster while lacking the bad end lag should Frank miss the initial swing. While its only mall location is the sports store in the front of the entrance plaza, it's no more isolated than some of the other weapons in B tier thus far, and this one at least spawns next to a bike. It also lasts longer than the Battle Axe, which is also an Entra Plaza exclusive weapon, since it just has a lot of the better qualities over previous items with none of those downsides, if anything being more forgiving than a lot of them. It's only logical that it beats them out in terms of the B tier rankings. If you're using the sportsbook in Dead Rising, try adjusting your route to get the pickaxe more often. It's a solid, reliable option.
Ooh, you better believe that's a pattern.
Both of these weapons are not great at killing zombies to various degrees, but both are really good at making space. The Nightstick is the less extreme. It can be gotten from cop zombies, with every zone having the capacity to spawn one. They last for only 25 hits and cannot be boosted by any bugs, but its attack animation is what makes it work. Frank swings side to side while moving forward with each swing. This allows him to push his way through the hordes to reach a new load zone, which can make its only okay damage irrelevant. That being said, it can also stun zombies long enough for the second hit to connect, making it good for killing small groups in a pinch. And while its damage isn't great, that combined with its consistent attack speed makes it an okay boss option as well. The shovel, on the other hand, is an absolute extreme case. It is one of the weakest weapons in the game. It will never one-shot a zombie in any context, at any level. Instead, its purpose is to knock down zombies and then use the heavy attack to kill them. But since the heavy attack can only hit a zombie lying down, meaning a zombie getting up will not get hit at all, that's not reliable. So instead, ignore the heavy hit, and just abuse the absurd 60 hits it has before you apply any book buff. With the construction book, that is 180 hits of just knocking zombies to the floor effortlessly. Need to get to the gun shop? Want to get across North Plaza? Open up a cardboard box, you'll probably find one, and you're guaranteed a way to safely keep the zombies at bay for a while. Albeit non-lethally.
No pain! No pain! No pain!
Finally a good throwing weapon. These are probably the most famous throwing weapon in the first game, and for good reason. 30 projectiles of moderate damage that will always be of use. The obvious value is how common they are and how strong the throwing weapons are when Frank maxes out the throwing stats. However, Frank does not need max stats to make the plates useful. Unlike most throwing weapons, Frank can be as little as halfway maxed on range damage and be able to kill most daytime zombies with a headshot. It won't trigger the instant decapitation effect at that level, but it will cross the damage threshold to deplete their health. And since the zombie count is very low on day 1, using the plates to safely take out stragglers when Frank is a bit squishier is pretty viable. On max level, Frank can use them as a slow but steady means of damaging and defeating bosses. and since plates only come from endless spawners, they will always be available in mass. It's simply the first throwing weapon that's good regardless of Frank's level or situation. It helps that you don't have to retrieve them.
Light as a feather, but heavy as a brick!
The shelf is a slow and heavy weapon, but is the strongest one you can find in the game without needing to complete an achievement. I have a bit of a favoritism towards this, as I did a run of the game where I beat every boss using this thing, minus the 2 where it's physically impossible to bring one. But here's the thing, it's not limited to level 50 challenge runs. It's actually not a bad option on a fresh run if you're leveling up fast enough and you're confident in your ability to land those hits. It can make a joke out of the Hall family, more than they already are, and its long reach can be a very viable option against Sean, while killing him in only a few hits. And then there's the accidental perk. If Frank gets bitten while holding this, he drops it. If it falls towards him, it'll interrupt the zombie grapple animation, possibly before Frank has taken any damage. So if you get lucky, carrying this thing can be a makeshift untouchable. And it makes it more viable to bring across the mall for boss fights than most heavy weapons are. It's the stupidest boss killer in the game, nay the franchise, and it's one of my favorites because of it.
I can explain.
Alright, so this is a last-minute change. After recording everything and gathering some proper footage, I realized the hockey stick is way better than I gave it credit for. It has the benefits of the golf club, but it attacks faster, has a wider hitbox, and the puck can hit multiple targets. Its damage isn't half bad either, so it can take on lower health bosses like the Hall family. It's not perfect by any means, its projectile can't leave the ground, it's not affected by books, and while it's not deep into the entrance plaza, that's still an unnecessary detour. But even more so than with the golf club, the hockey stick might be worth it if you're willing to master it.
Hi, I'm Darren Norris. I play Gordy, the janitor, on Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide.
Like the mailbox, the push broom is a makeshift hammer that becomes a makeshift spear once the head breaks off. Unlike the mailbox, it's found in almost every location in the mall thanks to the bathrooms alone. If combined with the lifestyle book, it becomes one of Frank's most reliable and longest-reaching melee options. And as a spear, it can also launch zombies backwards and knock over other zombies while doing so, clearing space and/or buying time to kill anything closer to you, preferably with skill moves if you're at a high enough level. And that's it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a good weapon with good range that's not quite top tier good.
Welcome to Mario Kart.
These 3 items all have the rare benefit of buffing Frank's mobility. The parasol is the slowest and can only shove zombies out of the way, but it has the widest range of any melee weapon in the game, technically speaking. It also means survivors can easily follow behind you as you shove the zombies, although the fact that they only spawn in Alfresca and Entrance Plaza makes them better for just getting Frank safely to his intended destination. The skateboard, on the other hand, can be found in Paradise and Entrance Plaza and fits in Frank's inventory. And it can be triple booked, while the other 2 mobility options only have 1 book that apply to them. But it's incredibly fragile, lasting only a couple hits before breaking. So the player either needs to be very cautious or devote a lot of inventory space to these. Somewhere in the middle is a happy medium we call the shopping cart. It's fairly common in the mall, as zombies tend to push these around in most of the indoor locations. Its durability is solid, and it's pretty fast. That said, its handling is stiff, it's prone to struggling with elevation, and it does not fit in your inventory. So with all of these, there's a trade-off. Still, with enough skill, any of them can be useful even without books, and they're strong enough in their utility to justify devoting books to them.
We possess unregistered firearms.
Ah, the Triforce of good ranged weapons. The lemonade cans are a perfect in-between of the plates and the saw blades. They may only have 12 shots per box, but they can do much more damage than the former, and they don't need to be picked up like the latter. This makes them ideal for psychopath encounters, even if Frank hasn't yet maxed out his throwing stat. Spitfire, on top of being a 6-block healing item, is basically a handgun that runs on a timer instead of ammo. While the spit arcs down heavily and does not guarantee a kill upon headshot, it doesn't suffer from any damage drop-off. This makes it perfect for dealing with groups of zombies, especially if Frank can do so from a safe place. It's also a half-decent boss killer, being surprisingly sustainable. And once again, falling into a sweet middle, we have the handgun. Its damage is weak, but it can instantly kill zombies with a blow through the middle of the head. More importantly, it can kill cultists through the very same means. Even if it doesn't trigger the instant kill on the cultists, it'll put them on death's door, and if you're a fast shot, you can get a second shot off before they pull out the dynamite. It can be given to survivors as a ranged weapon if you don't have any better options, and it's the most common of these three since trash cans and cop zombies tend to have them. In the end, these three are the best ranged weapons to use on short notice. The cans help a lot with bosses, the Spitfire is good for zombies, while the handgun can arm survivors and lobotomize the cult.
I would like to warn you, I am a very dangerous person.
If there's any weapon on the list I'm overstating the value of, it's the chainsaw. On its own, it's a C-tier weapon at best. Its ability to one-shot zombies is offset by its pathetic durability of 20 hits. That's fine for one-hit-at-a-time weapons, but the chainsaw flails about wildly and can hit zombies that get too close to you while not actually being a threat to you. And its best use is to clear out zombies while moving, so it basically needs a book to be useful. And it's only in two places, Al Fresco Plaza and the Home Saloon. I wish there was an achievement that unlocked a spare chainsaw for the security room. But on the other hand, once you do give it a book, oh man does it become so much better. The 60 hits is almost always enough to get through an entire section of the mall, sometimes with a bit to spare. It can allow Frank to quickly go from the saloon to the gun store since the running animation has basically no slowdown. And it makes saving Gordon actually tolerable. And with both books, the Blade and Engineering, the 180 hits of non-stop zombie bisection is an unmatched feeling in the game, both in terms of effectiveness and just sheer fun. There is no weapon in the game that benefits from the durability buffs quite like the chainsaw, even if the raw numbers might suggest otherwise, as a double-book chainsaw is a high A-tier weapon. However, I also haven't brought up that the chainsaw needs to be revved up every time you drop it, and there's no book to fix that. So, with these rather strong positives and negatives in mind, I landed on a very high B tier. It needs books to be good, but there's no denying how good or fun an optimal chainsaw is.
Another Home Depot certified advantage. The satisfaction guarantee.
On the other end of the spectrum, the definitive whacking sticks are the king of B tier through sheer reliability. They can one-shot the weaker zombies at level 1, and at level 50 can take on most of the horde at night, save for maybe the cop zombies. They aren't optimal for the cultists or the special forces, but they have fast DPS and get reasonably strong as Frank levels up, so they're not a bad option for bosses. They only last for 20 hits, and they can only be affected by a single book, but that book is in Paradise Plaza and these are in the warehouse, so you can stock up on them, make them last a while, and if you need to, drop the book and pick it up on the way back when you refresh them. And on top of appearing in the warehouse, you can find them in Al Fresco Plaza near the food court and all over North Plaza. No matter Frank's level or even location, these are fine options. Can you do better than them? Yeah, but you can't go wrong with them either.
That's how to work a pump-action shotgun. Subscribe for more.
Being the only firearm in the entire game with target penetration, the shotgun is a force to be reckoned with. Capable of slaughtering multiple zombies with a single shot, the pellet gun is the best horde-clearing option in the game as far as raw numbers are concerned. It's also the weirdest boss drop in the game. It technically isn't locked behind a boss, but given that Cletus is in the gun shop for 2 out of the 3 days, it may as well be. But while it's limited to the gun shop save for a few survivors, its zombie kill potential and the fact the game spawns 3 of them makes it worth it. There are 2 downsides that not only locked it out of S tier, but almost kicked it down to B tier. The first is the damage. It can be surprisingly mediocre, all things considered. Against zombies, it's a non-issue. You're using it for the limb dismemberment, and even at night it can pretty easily kill zombies. It's not great against bosses, but it can stack up if you're consistent with landing your shots. But against cultists, and especially the special forces, it's a reliable way to piss them off while not actually killing them. The cultists appear in too high of a number and need a headshot with a weapon that's just not accurate, while the troopers are too durable and are immune to headshots. But worst of all, the shotgun can instantly kill survivors with a headshot. And while it's not likely to happen by accident, it only needs to happen once. The saving grace, and what secured it to A tier, is that it's the best weapon to give survivors. Weapons do not deteriorate or run out of ammo with survivors, and they cannot trigger any high damage effects. So while they can chip off the health of others or Frank, it's hardly the most dangerous thing ever. And since Brian drops a shotgun when he dies in the opening, you can always have one on hand to give to a survivor. And being the best weapon in survivors' hands has to be worthy of at least A tier, right? Wait, it's my list. I get the final say in that. Of course it does.
Soul Calibur 2, rated T for teen.
The katana is definitely the more famous of these two. It has a very convenient secret spawn location in Paradise Plaza, and its rapid high damage attack makes it a great boss killer at any level. Its weakness is that not only is it fragile, but it can struggle to hit multiple targets at once, making it less desirable for dealing with zombie hordes or cultists, even when you equip the Blades book. The sword is its often forgotten about big brother. Found exclusively in North Plaza's Ripper Blades, probably the big reason most people don't think about it, the broadsword is slower to attack with a noticeable amount of ending lag. But it has tremendous reach for a melee weapon, and it has a jump attack that hits slightly harder while negating fall-off damage. This also makes it a good option for fighting psychopaths, but instead of through DPS, it allows you to attack at a safer range. So for enemies like Steven, Paul, or Sean, both two-handed knives shine against the Special Forces. Now, at a max attack power, the Spec Ops will need 2 hits each, regardless of which sword you're using. For the katana, its fast attack speed renders that a non-issue. For the sword, it allows you to hit multiple targets at once, which optimizes the most out of your combos. One is quick and simple with capped effectiveness, one is slow and clunky with greater potential. Both will serve you well, preferably with the Blades book in your pocket. The frying pan will only ever last 30 hits, and no books apply to it. This guarantees it will never reach S tier. The weapon technically has 2 different attack stats, the heated and unheated versions, but you'll almost never find a frying pan away from a stove, so that hardly matters. What really matters is that every time you use a frying pan on a different stove, Frank gets a small PP bonus, with a much bigger one for using all of them. This can give Frank a much needed boost early game. Its ability to instant kill zombies with the execution makes locking down a location from stragglers much safer, especially when nighttime rolls around and even some of the better weapons can struggle to kill the stronger zombies. And between its good damage when heated up and its fast attack swing, it's a decent way to put a dent into a psychopath's health bar. Overall, I would say it's one of Frank's better early game weapons, versatile enough to be used against both regular zombies and bosses. And when inventory space is at a premium and you need to really consider what books you can carry, if any, having a strong improvised weapon like this is very, very valuable.
Hey, look, buddy. I'm saying.
The guitars are just overall better than the frying pan. They last for 40 hits and are affected by the entertainment book. However, they only spawn in exactly one store, the guitar shop in Paradise Plaza. This makes them only good at stocking up on when beginning a new adventure out into the mall, but they're durable enough to serve that purpose. All 4 guitars share the same base attack of Frank flinging them upwards, which doesn't have nearly as much range as you might think based on the animation. Now, each guitar does have a unique 3rd hit, which doubles as a heavy attack as well. The bass guitar is the most dangerous, as the bass drop can instantly kill a zombie or a survivor if it hits them in the head. The surfboard's 360 attack has good coverage, but a really wonky hitbox, making it easy to miss zombies that look like they should have been hit. The Flying V model has a battle axe style swing that can take out zombies right in front of Frank, although it has a bit of end lag to its attack. The acoustic guitar, in defiance of common sense, ends up the strongest with a powerful forward jab attack with extra range, minimal end lag, accuracy without accidental survivor lethality, and no drop in attack power despite, well, being made of hollow wood. While they're not common enough to make it into S tier, they're a personal favorite of mine and definitely strong enough to base a playstyle around.
Pre-order Left 4 Dead 2 at GameStop and get an exclusive in-game baseball bat.
The baseball bat may only last for 30 hits, but it can hit several targets at once, knocking them down or even knocking them away, and it can be boosted with the sports book to last for 90 hits. Its damage is pretty good, especially at higher levels, it attacks very quickly, and it's very common. Paradise Plaza, Entrance Plaza, and Wonderland Plaza all have sports stores that infinitely spawn them. But the secret sauce is the trash cans, which have a 25% chance of dropping a bat. Much like the guitars, the baseball bat is good enough to base an entire playstyle on, albeit in this case it's through sheer availability rather than power. It also has a heavy attack, but it's more neat than actually useful. Honestly, the only reason this isn't S tier is because I reserved the S tier for the top 10, technically top 11, weapons. This and the next 2 may as well be honorary S tiers.
If you're injured by a big truck, call the hammer.
For most players, the sledgehammer is when they will find out that survivors can instantly die with a heavy blow to the head. Thankfully, its heavy attack is a sideways fling that does devastating damage to the undead, can deal good damage to bosses and cultists, has some of the best coverage of any melee weapon, largely invalidating its slow speed, and it lasts for 50 hits before applying the engineering book. All while, you know, not instantly killing survivors with that attack. If you can avoid turning the heads of friendly characters you meet in the mall into ragu by accident, Or if you're just willing to risk a reload, the sledgehammer will reward you. I disagree with the idea that the first Dead Rising is the best in the series, but there are some things it did do better. And it doesn't just have the best sledgehammer in the series, it has the best sledgehammer in any game I've played.
Return the slab.
The sickle has a chance to spawn from the cardboard boxes in the warehouse. This is both the best and worst trait of the weapon. You have a chance to find one. If RNG favors you, you have a strong weapon that can kill zombies en masse with the heavy attack, and execute them safely one by one with the normal attack. And the execution can hit more than one zombie because the corpse of the zombie flying forward is a very dangerous attack. The weapon also can be triple booked, and if RNG favors you enough, carrying more than one of those books might actually be worth it, just out of sheer convenience and zombie kill potential. In fact, I'd say this is Frank's best melee weapon for crowd control, since it does little damage to humans while reliably killing zombies any time of the day, and is one of the few weapons actually good at dealing with crawlers. However, that's also a problem. This weapon is only good against zombies. Now, to be fair, if there's any one thing in this game to specialize in, zombie genocide is probably a good PhD to have. And it does make it safe to use against survivors, but it can't do enough damage to the cultists for how numerous they are. It may as well do no damage to the special forces, and even the sniper family has enough health to withstand several attacks from one of these. And all of that assumes RNG blesses you. If it doesn't, you're heading to Leisure Park or the Home Saloon for one of these. Now granted, they're actually strong enough at zombie killing to justify the little detour, but it's a massive inconvenience that's out of your control and something that should be kept in mind. So overall, while I stand by that it's one of Frank's best weapons for what you spend most of the game doing, it falls just short of S tier.
This is where the fun begins.
The only surprise here is that this weapon isn't number 1. And spoiler alert, this is the longest weapon description in the entire video, because I'm going to be explaining why it's not at the top. Now, statistically, it is the best weapon in the game. It attacks as fast as the knife, does as much damage as the Mega Buster when Frank maxes out his attack power, and it can be triple booked to last over 2,000 hits. How is it not the best option? Well, those plus sides have diminishing returns, this weapon makes you worse at the game, and there's a few quirks with it people don't like to bring up. That fast attack speed and ability to hit through targets makes it a double-edged sword, as you can easily hurt or outright kill your survivors if you get careless. This gets worse with its 2 blind spots. It doesn't go as far to the left as you may want, while going much further to the right than you may intend. This makes it easy to accidentally hit something you're not aiming for and miss something that you are. Now, against the zombies that's a mild nuisance, but it makes it very inconsistent against the cult. That blind spot especially means that not only do they have an easy angle to hit you with the knockout gas attack, but if you swipe them and they survive, they're going to be in kamikaze mode if you can't immediately follow up. And because the cultists have very weird damage modifiers placed on them, even at level 50, this thing will not consistently one-shot them, but instead get them just low enough for said kamikaze attack. And then there's that durability. You don't need a weapon to last 2,000 hits. Hell, lasting 300 is pretty excessive when you realize you don't need to kill every zombie, especially when you see how good survivors are with guns. I can understand double or triple booking the skateboard or the sickle. The former is uniquely powerful, and the latter is uniquely mobile. Even triple booking the food for better heals off the scraps and saving the big ones for your survivors or yourself, that makes sense. But while the small chainsaw may as well be the strongest weapon in the game, it's not the only weapon that can one-shot zombies with ease. Hell, it's not even the only boss drop that does, it's just the first one. Once you start learning where the improvised weapons spawn, you only really need 1 book to optimize it, since 4 out of your max of 12 slots going to a single weapon is incredibly wasteful. I would say that its high durability is more of a crutch for the newer to intermediate players, or as a reward for endgame and new game plus, which you will really feel in the Infinity mode. Boss weapons don't respawn here, so you only get 4 small chainsaws in total, 2 each when Adam spawns. And since there's a good 5-day period between his 2 spawns, you need to either unlock the Mega Buster to minimize the horde, which is another inventory space you're giving up, or you need to get better at juking around the zombies. A skill you're not likely to have picked up if you spent the main game mashing X to make the problem go away. This goes double for learning the psychopath attack patterns in the Infinity mode, since you didn't need to learn the timing the first time if you can just melt the bosses in seconds, right? So players who rely on the small chainsaw exclusively will likely not be up for the challenge of the survival mode, even beyond the time commitment necessary. That's my big argument for it not being number 1. Sure, its stats are numerically the best, but practically, you don't need anything as good as this, and the fact that it can stop you from actually learning how the game works highlights just how much of a crutch it really is for me. This weapon has to be S tier for the stats alone, but I stand by that you, the player, can do better.
I move for no man.
My 9-day run in the Infinity mode for that Survivor video taught me two things. People over-rely on the small chainsaw, and a lot of people are sleeping on the ceremonial sword. It does have the downside of being one of the last weapons that a boss drops, hence why it's not higher in S tier. But there are still bosses left to fight with Paul, Kent, Carlito's final form, and Larry. The weapon uses the same attack animation as the broadsword, with the same benefits and weaknesses, but with an absurd 100-hit durability, making it the longest-lasting weapon in the game not locked behind an achievement. The Infinity mode is when those traits come into their own, as its high durability means that even without the Blades book, it can carry the player very far. Whose high durability compared to the psychopaths can present a problem, and against said psychopaths, it's a very safe option. And it's regularly dropped too. On top of Sean spawning twice, 3 survivors will also reward one for their defeat. And you never have to wait more than 2 days for a refresh. So, if you are willing to use the Blades book in the Infinity mode, this can quite literally carry you. It's a phenomenal weapon, even if it arrives a little too late in the story mode.
Coach! The building's on fire!
No, girl. It's just New Orleans.
I have no idea why they made this weapon so good, but I'm glad they did. It's one of the few weapons that can one-shot common zombies at level 1, and will one-shot all zombies at night at level 50, aside from maybe cop zombies. It hits as fast as the lead pipe while lasting twice as long, making it one of the few weapons that doesn't need a book to get extended use out of. It is a great weapon for defeating the special forces, since 2 whacks will down a trooper, which in turn gives Frank access to a machine gun to deal with other troopers at a range. And they are the best non-boss melee weapon to use against psychopaths. Really, the only thing that it's not great at is killing cultists, since, much like the small chainsaw, it struggles to consistently one-shot them, though it also knocks them away on hit, so it can be a good way to get one away from you. And to be fair, it's hardly the only melee weapon to struggle with that. The warehouse has 2 mannequins right outside the elevator to the rooftop, allowing for 2 of these death sticks to be stocked up anytime you head in or out of the mall. There are also 2 books that work on the torso, Lifestyle Magazine and Interior Design. Both of these books work with the improvised weapons in the mall, allowing Frank to have these durable whackers and to make use of said improvised weapons, which will actually end up extending the life of the torso even further. But even without those books, it still lasts twice as long as most weapons you find lying around, so they quite literally fit into any playstyle. And that's before I mention that you can find mannequins in Wonderland and North Plazas. And if you're willing to fight through the cultists, you can also find an extra torso in the movie theater for when you fight Sean. It is the best weapon you find in the warehouse, it can be replaced in 2 of the most commonly visited sections of the map, and it's one of the most reliable weapons in the dead end of the movie theater. All of this on top of being one of your strongest options. What else do you need?
Loot Crate sponsorships have probably funded Oklahoma's government, they're everywhere.
You want another one of those little things that the first Dead Rising actually did do better than the sequels? Containers. In the first game, cardboard boxes have a wide range of items based on what location of the mall you're in, right down to different stores having different drops. Meanwhile, the trash can only drop 1 of 4 items: a baseball bat, a knife, a pistol, or a bag of Doritos. The cardboard boxes greatly increase the amount of weapons or items that spawn in the game, which help alleviate the lack of diverse weapon distribution that the game admittedly still suffers from. And it can give some powerful drops in a pinch, like raw meat or skateboards, if you know which box can drop what. Meanwhile, the trash cans give a consistent list of useful items, which in turn become more useful because the trash cans always drop them. And with how there is a skill move that instantly opens either of them, and how ever present they are in the mall, these are just some of the most helpful items in the game. Who cares how good they actually are as weapons? You're not using these to kill, you're opening them up to get something to kill, or to eat.
Stranger, stranger. Now that's a weapon.
The SMG isn't strictly the best gun at any one thing. The pistol is more readily available, the sniper rifle is better at killing bosses and has longer range, the shotgun is better for horde clearing and is the best weapon to give survivors. The military machine guns are far more powerful, making them better at dealing with stragglers and mid-grade human enemies. However, the SMG is good at all of them while lacking the crippling downsides most guns have. It's the second most readily available gun, with the SMG having a secret spawn location in almost every section in the mall. Each individual shot is noticeably stronger than the pistol, while being completely automatic with a lot of ammo reserve for amazing DPS. It is still really good at beating bosses, it is a good option for crowd control, and it's a good weapon to give survivors, but it's not nearly as rare as the shotgun and rifle, and it won't instantly kill them with a headshot. And the two larger machine guns can only be gotten under very precise circumstances, while all the player has to do to replace the SMG is keep track of which one spawns in which area. And that's the strength of the SMG. It's good at everything without needing any asterisks. It can fit into every single playstyle, and nearly every section of the mall has one. It being a common drop in the Infinity mode definitely helps, but its utility in 72-hour mode alone secured its S ranking.
Buzz off, you little pests!
No grenade-type weapon will ever compare to the Queen in classic-era Dead Rising. Capable of killing every zombie in a wide radius, easily reaching the triple digits if used in the underground tunnels, all while not posing any direct threat to you or your fellow survivors, beyond the nighttime larva. But then there's the photo opportunity, as a photo of a massive horde dying with the larva popping out of them can earn thousands of prestige points, far more than the PP stickers will give. And it can be spammed. Oh, and since they're found in zombies, they can spawn literally anywhere. But putting all of that aside, here's my pitch for the Queen being S tier if one is needed. The Queen has an entire mixed drink devoted to it, with it summoning one and making them more common, while attracting them to you. And whenever one spawns, it's always a question of if it's worth dropping something to store another one, regardless of which of the three modes are being played. You cannot say that about any other weapon in the game.
They're great for puncturing, great for slashing, and they're great for doing actual work.
These little guys are the main reason that criminal biology is so overpowered. Contrary to what you might think, there is a difference between these two. The hunting knife is more common, between the trash cans and the thug zombies that drop them. However, the cleaver does more damage, being able to one-shot zombies more consistently and defeat bosses a bit faster.
Observe.
But with criminal biology, these go from lasting 20 hits to 60, so the player can simply keep using the hunting knives to kill zombies until they find another thug zombie in 10 seconds, or a lucky trash can drop, and save a cleaver for a bigger threat like the raincoat cult or a psychopath. This is especially helpful in the Infinity mode, where preserving the best weapons is far more crucial for a good run. But even without the book, the knives can be used as a fairly strong yet disposable weapon while saving better tools for later. Much like the SMG, the knives are just very flexible to any given playstyle, all the while single-handedly raising an already good book to top-tier broken status.
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
The machete is in many ways the safer version of the small chainsaw. The small chainsaw does absurd damage, but it can easily kill friendly survivors if careless, while the machete does great but not insane damage, making it safer to use around survivors while still being a great boss killer. The small chainsaw has great range for a melee weapon, but it flails about wildly with a combo that doesn't always loop properly. Meanwhile, the machete has more range than the standard knife, while having a near-perfect looping combo and a much more controlled swing. The small chainsaw spawns in Wonderland Plaza, but it's not exactly right next to the shortcuts, and you'll often need to navigate a couple hordes to reach it. The machete is in North Plaza, which isn't as easy to get to, but it's where most of the second half of the game revolves around, and it's close to the gun store, and since you can just enter and exit the saloon, it's way easier to stock up on machetes if you find the need to. I would be willing to say that the small chainsaw is better than the machete when it comes to the special forces, because it can reliably one-shot them, but the machete is much better against the cult, since it does about the same damage to them, and its combo just won't fail you as often. Both are very early boss drops, and both end boss fights very quickly. For my money though, when you get to the point when you don't need to triple book the clown cutter, the bushwhacker is overall preferable. The small chainsaw may be the best weapon for the special forces, and the ceremonial sword rules over the Infinity mode, but for the bread and butter 72-hour mode experience, no weapon lives up to the machete for me these days. It's very durable, it's easy to replace or even stock up on, and it perfectly balances damage output with mistake allowance. There is simply never a bad situation to use one. And now, as promised, here's a quick list of notable weapon changes in Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, and if they would have any material impact on the weapon's original ranking. The 3 F-tier weapons are moved up to E-tier, as they have books that give them proper damage, making them at least interesting weapons, though I still wouldn't call them that good. The small chainsaw is now in C-tier, as its damage output has been rightfully nerfed into the ground. The wine casket is moved up to C-tier, as its ability to block bullets makes it useful for the first Carlito fight. I'd rank it up there with the likes of the stepladder. The parasol makes it up to A-tier, since it can also absorb sniper rifle rounds for Carlito and the Hall family, on top of the uses it has in the normal game. The other heavy weapons that can block damage are not actually buffed by this, as it means that random zombie slaps now deteriorate heavy weapons fairly quickly if Frank dwaddles around them. But they can't protect him from the back, which is where he's more vulnerable. Plus, most of them break after only 1 or 2 shots anyway. All 3 shelf weapons are now in D tier, as their damage has been crippled. Unlike the small chainsaw, this was completely unnecessary. The skateboard moves up to A tier as it's now more durable, and the lower zombie count means it'll last much longer without any books. The shopping carts and weapon cart are now in F tier. Their controls are horrible, their wind-up requires you to file 30 days in advance to move, and they are slower than actually just running. Weapons like the oil barrel, cooking oil, and the perfume prop now drop liquid upon hitting an enemy. In the original Dead Rising, this would have been a game changer. However, between the lower zombie count and the wonky coding of how zombies interact with, well, anything, it results in a zero-sum gain. No change in ranking. The meat cleaver is now in B tier. It's noticeably stronger, it can be gotten in New Game Plus with the blending book, and it's a common and powerful drop in the new Infinity mode. Throwing weapons like CDs, soda cans, and plates are now in D tier. The Firework book turns them into fairly strong weapons, but all of them have minimal damage even at level 50, and the instant kill headshot effect now only works maybe at most a third of the time. Honestly, they'd be in F tier if not for that stupid book. The rocket launcher is in B tier, the machine gun is now in A tier, and the heavy machine gun is now S tier. All for the same reason though. They can be made with the blending book in New Game Plus, but they are now go-to weapons in the Infinity mode, thanks to zombies dropping anything, and the special forces being spam starting on Night 3. The bench and the baseball bat do not get new rankings even with their different attack animations. The baseball bat is more or less just as good, if not a little more awkward, and the bench just trades high damage for better reach. The real Mega Buster is now in D tier. The lower zombie count makes the Zombie Genocider achievement even more time-consuming and tedious, despite the fact that you're allowed to do it over multiple playthroughs this time. But the Buster itself is honestly not that fun to use. Its rate of fire is about on par with the water gun now, and its charge shots are almost completely useless outside of boss fights, who will probably never give you the time to charge up a blast anyway. The laser sword is now in B tier, as 5-Day Survivor is far more manageable than it used to be thanks to the ability to suspend a run. The hedge trimmers are now in D tier, if not E tier, as zombies have the ability to phase through attacks, rendering their one main benefit completely mute. The shotgun is now in high C tier at best. The lower zombie count and the butchered hipfire make this thing far less useful, and if you're not willing to carry the book that increases the damage of firearms, it's not that good against bosses. The sniper rifle is now in high B tier thanks to the recycling book, which allows them to spawn from cardboard boxes when held. And unlike most guns, it doesn't suffer much from bosses getting glorified iframes because it's slow to fire to begin with. The pistol has been raised to A tier, while the SMG has been lowered to A tier. The pistol is a bit stronger and benefits from the gunslinger books. The SMG is hurt pretty bad by the bosses getting damage resistance, but the DPS is just good enough to overcome that with some of the weaker bosses like the Hall family. Finally, the chainsaw is now in S tier, and even as someone who doesn't like this remake, it's the best chainsaw in the series. And with that, every weapon in the original Dead Rising is ranked, with any addendums for the remake included. This list has been in the works for at least a year. Here's hoping it would have been worth the wait. Given everything and anything's a weapon, it makes sense that some are just jokes and some are shockingly good. But for the most part, I'm curious to see if any of my takes are particularly hot this time. Though beyond that, outside of something niche or a remake of my earlier tier lists, I expect this to be my last serious tier list of the OG game. It's been a hell of a 4 years, but I think it's time to give Fortune City and Los Perdidos a bit more attention. Thanks for watching, both then and now, and I'll see you next time. A skill you're not likely to have learned if you spent the entire main game pressing A. A skill you're not likely to have picked up if you spent the main game. A skill you're not likely to have picked up if you A skill you're not likely to have picked up if you spent the men. A skill you're not likely to have picked up if you spent the main game pressing X to make the problem go away.